The other day, the Weather Channel posted on Threads an absolute truth nuke. When people see precipitation percentages in weather forecasts, it's not always obvious exactly what that means when you really stop and think about it. But the Weather Channel finally clarified that, for example, 70% chance of rain means there's a 70% chance that it's gonna rain. So I want to look at their post here and discuss some of the reactions to this. And I think after looking more into what the percent rain really means, because it turns out I had no clue either, I don't feel like this summary is 100% accurate that they've given here. It's decent, but I don't know that it's 100% accurate. But let's take a look. So they said, friendly PSA, 70% chance of rain doesn't mean it's raining 70% of the day, or over 70% of your town. It means if we replayed today's exact atmospheric conditions 100 times, it would rain in 70 of those 100 timelines. That makes sense. I'm a little bit of a weather junkie. Think I get it from my mom. I'm always checking the weather. You know, during the summer, I love a good thunderstorm. During the winter, I love a good snowstorm. So I'm always checking the weather to see what goods are coming. But anyways, yeah, as a chronic weather forecast consumer, when I saw this summary from the Weather Channel, I, probably like a lot of you, thought, what did people think a 70% chance of rain meant? Well, apparently, after looking through some online forums and years-old discussions about this topic, the Weather Channel did address some common misconceptions. Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that 40% chance of precipitation means that it's gonna rain over 40% of the forecast area. Of course, these forecasts are localized. You know, you look up the weather forecast for a certain area, and some people thought that the percent was the percent of the area. Now, to me, that sounds really silly, but it turns out there's actually a bit of a grain of truth to that perspective. Another common misconception, as the Weather Channel mentioned here, is some people had a time conception, which I guess isn't super crazy either. You know, if you just don't know what it means, I mean, you don't study meteorology, how do you know what this means? That seems like a reasonable guess. A 50% chance of rain, so it's gonna rain, 50% of the day. One guy replied to this saying, I understand less now, which is surprising, because this seemed like a pretty solid summary to me. Certainly, at least it makes sense, even if it's not 100% true, but hopefully if you understand less now, maybe you'll also understand a little bit better once I'm done explaining my personal findings. Another guy says, this is literally how most people interpreted it until y'all, meteorologists, started saying it was 70% of a geological area, 70% of a forecast area, I guess he means. I never heard meteorologists say that, but I can understand where some confusion might come from once we get into the actual details of the calculation. Here's a good one. This person says, the Weather Channel, 70% chance of rain means there's a 70% chance it might rain. People's reaction, I don't know shit about And then that guy who reviews technology replied saying, this always made intuitive sense to me. The forecasts are run on models that have variances. If you run the simulation 100 times, it might only rain in 85 of them, and then there's an 85% chance of rain. This has a sort of phrase that I detest, by the way, not to be a hater here, but this always made intuitive sense. That sounds so much like logical sense, which is a phrase I cannot stand. People say, oh, that makes logical sense. And my question is always, as opposed to what? As opposed to illogical sense? Or logical nonsense? If it made intuitive sense to me, doesn't that just mean it makes sense to you? Like it's intuitive, makes sense? I don't know, it just seems a little redundant there. But really what this made me think of is that, yeah, from a mathematical perspective, if we say there's a 70% chance of rain and you don't know anything about meteorology, then probably a mathematically minded person's guess about what that means precisely is that there's some simulations that are being run on computers, and that in 70% of them, in 70 out of 100, it does turn out to rain. What does probability even mean if the event can't be repeated? And in this case, the repetition is coming from a simulation, and that's how we make some sort of prediction. But anyways, here's what it actually means, the percent chance of rain in a forecast area. What the forecasted percent means, from what I've been able to find, it's based on something called a POPS, a percent chance of precipitation. And the Weather Channel's summary of it here is pretty solid, but it has two factors. Literally, it's a multiplicative thing that comes from one thing times another thing. Now, one part of this product is the meteorologist, or maybe you would just call them a forecaster, the forecaster's confidence that a rain system is actually going to reach the forecast area, or perhaps that a rain system, I don't even know what system means. Okay, I'm no meteorologist, but the percent chance that one would move into an area or newly form in the area. So there's the percent confidence that that's going to happen from the forecaster. Now, this percent isn't just made up, right? It is based on computer models and live readings of the weather situation and past weather as well in the area. But you get this confidence percentage that there will be this rain system in the forecast area. And then the other factor that's in this product, two-factor product, the other factor, this is where the area actually comes in. And this is the part that really surprised me. The other factor is an area factor. It's of the forecast area, what percent of it is expected to fall under this rain system that may or may not appear, let's say tomorrow. And I guess you could also view a sort of binary toggle here of off or on. So if, for example, there could be this rain system tomorrow, but it's gonna rain less than 1/100th of an inch, well then the toggle would be set to off. That doesn't count for anything. There needs to be a measurable amount of rain, which is classified as over 1/100th of an inch. I'm getting this information from weather.gov. Apparently that's an amount of rain so that you would actually be able to see it pooling in puddles. But anyways, what this all means is that single rain or precipitation percentage kind of compresses and loses some information, because you could have two equal percentages on different days, but that are the result of very different precipitation situations. So for example, and this is an example from weather.gov, if a forecaster was 80% sure that rain was going to form or develop in an area, say tomorrow, but that formation was only going to cover 50% of the forecast area, then the POPS, or the percent of precipitation, would be reported as 0.8 times 0.5, so a 40% chance of precipitation. Now, in that case, the percent chance that there will be rain forming is quite high. That's at 80%. But the reported percentage, again, is 40%. And we could arrive at that same 40% with very different components making it up. On a different day, for example, the forecaster might be 100% certain, based on their models and their experience and their intuition and the live weather situation, 100% certain that rain is going to develop in the forecast area tomorrow. However, the rain system that's going to develop might be expected to cover only 40% of the forecast area. In that case, the percent would be reported as 100%, so 1 times 40%, or 0.4, which of course comes up to 40%. So the same percentage now, 40%, but this time there's a 100% chance that there's gonna be some rain in the area. However, if you were to randomly pick a spot from the area, only 40% of them would actually be affected by that rain. So you can see that it actually does have a lot to do with area. Now, unless the Weather Channel is running their calculations a completely different way, I think their summary really misses that area factor. They talk about running a simulation with today's exact atmospheric conditions 100 times, but the part they're leaving out is that you would also have to randomly select a point in the forecast area. Otherwise, for example, you could run a simulation 100 times, but if you've got a fixed point, which is never going to get covered by the system, whether the rain system develops or not, it's outside of the system, but in the forecast area, well then you could run a bajillion simulations. You could run a Google simulations if you dare, and you're never going to get a drop of rain over here in the dry section of the forecast area. And this actually shines quite a bit of light on my own personal experience. I feel like there have been very long streaks of time where I keep seeing forecasted rain, and I'm looking forward to some rain. You know, it's nice to relax to, kick back and read mathematics and the imagination. You know, it's very fun. But day after day after day, there's all this forecasted rain, and I never see a drip of it. And what's the deal? Well, of course, randomness, occasionally unlucky streaks, even lengthy ones, do occur. And based on how the forecasts are made, well, that makes sense now. It could just be a bunch of days in a row where there's a combination of, there's like a twofold thing here. You could have some days where I'm just outside of the rain area, and other days where I am inside the projected rain area, but the rain doesn't form. And so in that way, you could easily see how you could start to distrust the rain percentages. But once you understand where they actually come from, that's pretty interesting. Makes a lot more sense. That also explains why there is a lot of confusion about wait, this doesn't mean area, it doesn't mean 70% of the area, it means 70% chance? Well, it kind of means both.